Okay, we're going to start at the very beginning and install the Docker Toolbox. And you can see the Docker Toolbox version is 19.03.1, and I'm installing this on a Windows 10 home computer. So if we go through the installation, obviously you'll need to set uh, your directory um, for installation. Please bear in mind that Docker will actually um, run a VirtualBox within this folder. So you do want to make sure that there is plenty of space to do so. And it does actually stipulate 140 megabytes of free disk is required. But of course, you may want to include a larger file size. So the installation doesn't take very long. I'm going to keep this recording going in real time so you get an appreciation as to all of um, the time frames to get Docker working on your home PC, and of course TameNMR as well. Okay, so you can see that the apps have been installed, and these are also on the desktop. And if I double click on this, hopefully what you'll be able to see now is the Docker terminal. And as you can see, it is currently installing and creating the machine. So while this is loading, just the next step that we're going to go through is actually downloading from GitHub TameNMR, which was developed by Acheris Grauslies at the University of Liverpool. And once you've done this once, uh, unless there's any updates, uh, running Docker for future operations will be a lot quicker. And there we go. We've got Docker Interactive Shell up and running, and that is now installed on the PC, so I don't have to do that the next time I want to run Docker. So now what I want to do is I want to use this terminal to download and install the latest version of TameNMR, which is the software we're using within Docker. So we can run it in read-only mode just to check that everything is working. And the command to do this is in the installation guide, docker run -d -p, and then these are some local host locations for the server, and Acheris G / Galaxy TameNMR is the handle that Docker goes to download all the latest version and features of TameNMR. So this does take a couple of minutes. Again, once it's done, as long as there are no updates, this should be the only time you have to do this. So this version of TameNMR is actually coming from the Galaxy repository, Docker repository, rather than GitHub. You can also download it from GitHub yourself. And it will create the container in the first instance. However, for future iterations, when you run Docker and TameNMR in the future, you won't need to do this step because the container will be found locally. Obviously, at no point during the download and installation should you close the Docker terminal, but you may continue to use your PC for other. Now, as I said, 140 megabytes is for the Docker container. When you start to download and install TameNMR, you can see that the file size is considerably larger, and we will make available the full file size in the installation guide so that you can ensure that you have enough space. Okay, so that is the latest Galaxy TameNMR installed to the folder path that you have stipulated in the Docker installation. So now we can actually start to launch TameNMR in Docker and then access it via the server. So in the first instance, we're just going to check where this version that we have run is located. And for that, again, in the installation guide, the command is docker ps. And what you can see here, hopefully, is the container ID, which is a string of characters, the image name, and when it was created and its current status. Now, this might be useful if you have any issues when trying to access the server via the web browser, as it will take a short amount of time to become live. This should be plenty of time. So I'm going to open a browser. I'm just going to share that screen with you now. And hopefully you can see Mozilla there. And what we'd like to do is we'd actually like to just before we do this, we need to know for Windows Home Edition, Windows 10 Home Edition, what the local IP is. So what we would recommend for those using Mac would be to type http://localhost and then the port number, which is 8080. Now, Windows Home Edition doesn't necessarily have the local host map. So if I go back to the Docker terminal, we can find that out by typing Docker machine IP, which again is in the installation notes. So now we know that we're looking at 192.168.99.101. So if we go back to Mozilla, to our web browser, where it had a unable to connect, instead what we can type is http://192.168.99.100, which allows us to launch the Galaxy server. So the last thing you need to do when you are finished all of your analysis in Tame NMR through the Docker is to ensure that you shut the container down correctly. Again, these are contained within the installation instructions, but you can correctly close the container by first of all using the docker ps command to make a note of the Docker IP. Once we have, the Docker ID. Once we have the container ID, the command to successfully shut down is docker kill, and then the container ID, which is the string of letters and numbers listed directly under container ID. So with this command, that effectively ends the session, and do type docker ps just to make sure that you have no containers still running. And then to close Docker completely, type exit